Hello and welcome everyone. Today we're going to learn about JavaScript hoisting. In JavaScript, you know that there is a cool concept called hoisting and what actually hoisting means and what hoisting does. In JavaScript, hoisting is something that a variable and a function declaration that's always put into the memory in the compilation phase. So it can be accessed before we declare them in our code. As you know that the JavaScript is a scripting language, but still it does have a compilation phase. So in that compilation phase, it actually puts the function declarations and the variable into the memory, and that as it is actually into the memory, so we get it before we are able to actually kind of get the reference before we declare them. So okay, how that happens, let's get into the code and see how that happens in JavaScript. Okay, this is this very simple JavaScript tag where we're going to write some JavaScript hosting code. Let's first write console. Let's print console.log. Let's say first name. And if we just simply write this and try to see in the console, then we'll see that this variable does not have any reference. Okay, so let's go and see that. Okay, so see that the reference error first name is not defined. So because JavaScript is not understanding this variable, there is no reference to this variable. Okay, so now if you go in and change the code a bit, like declare the variable var, you can see that we are printing the variable before we are declaring it. So we are declaring it later. So in this case, the compilation phase, these variables declaration are actually into the memory. So what is happening is it is not throwing the reference error. It does know the first name. So the first name is actually has a reference. The variable does not have anything. If you print it, it will say undefined, but it is not an error. So if you just go and see that, okay, see the error is simply saying that it's undefined. Okay, so now there is another point in here. Like if we are going to go and initialize the variable, then you might think, okay, does the variable initialization also hoisted? That means if we declare a variable with the initial value, does it also prints it before we assign it? So the answer is no. JavaScript does not hoist the variable initialization. So let's take a look. If I just say Joe Smith and let's go to the browser, and you'll see that it is still undefined because it is not, the variable initialization is not hoisted. It's not into the memory. Okay, so that means we already learned that, okay, what is actually the variable hoisting. Now there is another part of to this, that is the function hoisting. That video JavaScript also hoists the function declaration. That means it keeps that function declaration into the memory, so we can call the function before we actually declare it. So let's take a look. Okay, in the code base, let's remove this and let's first of all let's say var name. Okay, and we say that, okay, get name method, I call the get name method, and declare the function. If you have the function get name, and all you have to do is return just and if you try to just simply say, okay, print that name and save this and run it on your browser, you'll see that the name is printed here. Joe Smith is printed here. Okay, so how the name got printed? Because this function, this is a function that actually a function declaration, and in the compilation phase this function is actually into the memory. So before we are declaring this function, even if we are calling this function, JavaScripts actually have that function declaration into the memory, so it gets it and prints the right name. So that's the function hoisting, and that's very clear. Okay, so now if you say, okay, the function declaration is actually hoisted, then what about the function expression? So there are multiple ways of declaring functions in JavaScript, and one of them is this function declaration, but pretty similar. Another one is like function expression. That means yeah, I can simply do this like var get name equals to function, and I simply can say return choice method. So this is another way of declaring function. This is called function expression. But as you can see that in here, even though it's a function, but it's still this right side is an initialization. Means you are sort of assigning this function to this variable. So this variable is actually hoisted, means it is in the memory, but this initialization part, this is not hoisted. So that's how this function, even if we are calling this function, even if we now call this function from here, it will throw an error. It will not do anything. So if you just check this in the console, you see that the type error get name is not a function because it does not know this as a function, because this part is not hoisted. So yeah, it's not. So this function expression is not hoisted. So that's pretty much the basic concept of hoisting in JavaScript. And if you have any other queries regarding hoisting, feel free to knock me. And thanks for watching this video.